Welcome back to Bunny Hoof Studio. My summer was quite intense. I worked on so many different things and still found time for a bit of fun. In this vlog you'll see me take on an art commission, talk through the process, as well as make big progress with my personal projects including my art doll, as well as tidying and organising my art materials after putting it off for way too long. So I've just had a commission come in with a really tight deadline. I've got 2 weeks to give them a completed illustration. It's a little bit different to what I would usually do. So this is a commission to create an illustration that's going to go on a guitar pedal. It has a much faster turnaround time than usual. After negotiating the fee, I also added a rush fee, which is, if you're interested, is standard practice if you're asked to do a commission that needs like a very tight deadline, because it basically means you might have to drop personal plans in order to complete the commission in time. You might have to work on your usual days off. You might have to push another project to the side in order to dedicate more time. Because of this, I'm very keen to get started as soon as possible. I sent them my contract, my first invoice. I always ask for 50% prior to starting, and basically that really helps to protect me because if the client backs out then I can keep the money, and the contract has all sorts of stipulations like cancelled at a certain point I get a certain percentage, or I keep the money they've given me. If the final illustration gets rejected because it's not good enough, I still retain 50%. That's not going to happen. That's never happened to me. I have had projects fall through, like they ended up not happening, in which case I keep the full fee because I created the whole illustration. Sometimes things just happen, especially in publishing, or projects just don't work out. It's got nothing to do with the illustrator, it's all to do with the company. So I sent them the contract. I received my payment, so I'm going to get started on roughs. And roughs is the first stage of the project where basically I create lots of sketches to basically work through various ideas, and they can tell me what they like, what they don't like, what they want more of, and it's just a quick way of working out ideas. Often I do this in pencil. I think today I'm going to do the roughs in pen using my... it's not here. Using my platinum fountain pen, because it will give a much better idea of how the final kind of illustration will look. So they also said that they are open to introducing colour, and I have not done colour in my illustrations for many years. I have done some colour paintings, and actually something I do want to try by colouring digitally some of my illustrations. I think in Critter, I think that's the one that's good for, it's an open source software for painting, and they have some really nice watercolour brushes. But for this, I will need to hand draw the illustration as usual, convert it into vector, and then use Adobe Illustrator to basically select which part's going to be what colour. So you'll see the process of me doing the roughs and creating the final illustration. It depends, I'm quite pushed for time, so I don't know how much of the process I'll be able to film. So I'm going to get started on the roughs. I forgot to say, they have a really pretty clear idea of what they want, and because we're so short on time, I'm going to mostly focus on that. 2 versions of their idea, and I'm going to put in an idea of my own. I don't think they'll go for it, but I asked and they said to give an idea of my own if I wanted, so I'm going to do that. So I'm kind of aiming for like 3 roughs to send them, and because they have such a clear idea, I'm going to do it in pen so they have a better idea of kind of how it will look and how it will be shaded. And I'm going to do them small and split to scale, because the smaller it is, the quicker I can draw it. So I'm going to do that now. I've got this sketchbook, which is what I sketch out all my ideas in, and I'm going to do some just very quick sketches so I can get a feel for how it's going to look. And then I've been using this little soft sketchbook for doing ink work, just odd bits and pieces. For some reason this became my sketchbook for using my fountain pen. Then I'm going to scan them, clean them up and send them ASAP basically, so that they can get back to me as soon as possible, because 2 weeks, depending on how you work or your experience of creating art, 2 weeks for a project commission is not a very long time, because it can take a very long time doing the back and forth, changing things slightly, sending it, getting feedback. It's not just me working on this. Motorbikes. There are so many motorbikes around here. If it was just me working on a a self-led project, I can literally make the decisions and changes as I go, but when you're dealing with other people's tastes and their vision and ideas, there's a lot more back and forth, and the rough stage can sometimes go on for quite a long time, so we basically need to get that sorted as soon as possible. So yeah, I'm gonna get started. I started by doing some very quick and rough sketches, just getting a feel for a few ideas before moving on to the roughs I wanted to draw up for them. I often gather reference material during this time too, and any other visual information they've given me or that I can find to help with this process. I also make notes of what they've asked me to create in their brief and make sure I'm taking all of this into account before moving on to some more solid ideas. This commission is a little different for me, and creating a design that's going to be on a product. So there's a lot to consider with the placement of the pedal buttons and knobs. I need to make sure the design is aligned with the product and the shapes of the product. They want a crystal to be the main focus of the design, and they want it to seem like it's hidden away in a forest for someone to stumble upon. They also want it to feel kind of like a storybook, so I'm playing around with different ways of showing this in the center of the pedal. The first is the crystal on a plinth. I actually looked up reference images of Rivendell in the Lord of the Rings films for this. The design of all the arches has always stayed with me since I watched it as a kid, and I thought it would fit the storybook ethereal forest theme nicely. I'm using my platinum fountain pen for most of the lines, and then my Pentel touch pen to fill in the black spaces quickly. The white space of the sky will be the background colour of the pedal, and any white spaces in between the ink. This second rough is lots of twisted roots wrapped around the base of the crystal and has the same background and general concept. I really like how this one turned out. Drawing all the twisted roots was really enjoyable. The third rough is an idea of my own. The storybook theme they mention in the brief made me want to play around with a unicorn in the center, jumping over a crystal or a few crystals. So I drew up this very quick page of ideas. Very, very rough. I'm not actually going to send this to them. This is more for me. It was actually quite fun. I had quite a lot of fun doing these. I sort of just wanted to get the ideas out of my system. I have a feeling they'll probably ask me to pull back on the background detail. They said they don't generally like to put designs like corner to corner because it looks more like a sticker that way. I personally think that it would look really cool with like a corner to corner design. But that's not what's important. What's important is doing and creating what they want. So I figured it was better to do a bit too much, and it's very easy to pull back on background detail. So yeah, I have my little sketchbook here. You can see they're really small. I just did these very quickly, as you could see on camera. My unicorn as well. Here we'll see what they say. I'm pretty sure they won't want the unicorn, but I really like the idea of getting somebody to put a unicorn on a guitar pedal. Maybe next time. Before sending off the final rough ideas, I decide to colour them using Photoshop. I do this very quickly and also remove some background to help give some more options. I feel the green is a little dull looking, so I'll probably ask them what they want to do for colour. But as we don't have much time, I want to give them as much to look at as possible for this first round of roughs. I've compiled a nice email for them, basically explained my thought process very briefly for each one, and I also have done coloured versions as well. Very, very roughly coloured them in Photoshop, just to get a feel. And I pulled the colours from a reference image they gave me, just for like inspiration, I guess. So we'll see what they say about the colours, we'll see what they say about the designs, and I always get a little bit nervous waiting for feedback. So we'll see what they say. Time to ink the final illustration. I'm using a dip pen in Indian ink and very smooth Bristol paper. After hearing back from them, they decided on the crystal wrapped in roots, but wanted much less background so that the crystal stands out even more, and so that the design doesn't look too much like a sticker. I decided to draw the final design much larger than it will be on the product, as this makes it easier to create a difference in line thickness. The crystal needs a thicker line than the background foliage so that it stands out more, so I'm switching between two different nibs to add variation in line quality. I I then fill the gaps between the roots with my signature scribbles and begin adding the grass to the background and a little detail to the leaves, but not too much. I don't want to overwhelm the piece with detail. Some final stippling on the crystal surface to add more dimension, and I'm finished. I will be sharing the finished illustration on the pedal at the end of the video if you want to see how it turned out with all its colours. Every summer I try and make it to the beach a few times, even if I'm busy. I didn't bring my camera with me as sand and camera equipment are usually a disaster, but I did take a few clips of the waves on my phone. The waves along the Portuguese coast can be really strong and quite dangerous, but I'm always on the lookout for safe places to swim. I don't really like spending time in the sun, and I'm not even necessarily that into just kind of lying on a beach, but I do really love being submerged in icy water, especially when temperatures hike up to 30+ degrees. One of my favourite things in recent years has been finding all the secret spots to collect the most interesting shells. And this is my box dedicating to hosting all the strange and unusual things I have found in the forest, as well as the shells I have come home with. The shells I find are usually impossibly small. My favourites are the ones that look like unicorn horns, but I also love finding mother of pearl or shells that are incredibly smooth in some way or have an unusual colour or texture. I have been putting off tidying my studio space for an embarrassingly long time. I still hadn't unpacked and organised everything I had taken from Carnival all the way back in March. Every corner has become overrun with spiders and cobwebs, as well as an overflowing bin full of tape, cardboard and paper scraps. It was starting to really bother me, so it was time to tackle it. So you can see part of my Carnival costume here, this mushroom hat. If you want to see me making that, it's in my spring art vlog and I will link it below so you can watch if you want. I lost count of how many spiders were living on the ceiling, but it was at least 20, probably more. I always feel a bit bad getting rid of spiders, but I really don't want lots of dust in a space where I make and create art that needs to stay clean. So now I'm sorting out the very embarrassing overflowing bin. In my defense, there's nothing actually dirty in it, it's just a lot of scrap paper, cardboard and various other bits and pieces from making things. I've just cleared out and cleaned the tiny cupboard room to the left, so that I can put some drawers in there to better store all my art materials. I forgot to mention, just in case you haven't heard me say this before, but my art studio is actually an old caravan, and it can be tough working in such a small space sometimes. I'm often working on several projects at once, so things can get really chaotic when I'm switching between sculpting, inking, laptop digital work, and sewing all in one space. I have lots of art materials to organise into the new drawers. My little jar of slip, which is very watery clay, my jar of turpentine for oil painting, my big bottle of Indian ink, all my different varnishes for ceramics and paintings. Lots of these acrylic paint tubes. The brand is called Abstract by Senelia. I always have a box of just random things. This one has tape, wool, linseed oil, ribbon and doll stuffing. And a van battery, because who doesn't need a spare van battery in their art studio? This thing is really heavy as well. And then this cupboard has become a mix of packaging materials and paint. More acrylics, more wool for some reason, a tiny saw, a plastic egg, pretty sure that's a cat toy actually, and an old oil painting I forgot about that I can't show you all of. YouTube doesn't mind naked sharks though. Wine boxes actually make really good packaging for my prints, so I like to reuse them to send my prints and books. A shamefully dusty ink bottle, I'm not sure how this got so dusty. My lovely brush holder that my partner got for me one Christmas, I really love it. Now to fill up the drawers with all of my stuff. I decided to organise the top drawer into all my sculpting materials, my varnishes, clay and tools. The second drawer is for all my sewing things, material, tools, ribbon, needles and all sorts. The third drawer I kept for stationery and watercolour pencils and watercolours, basically art materials I use less often. And the other two drawers have all my paints and other miscellaneous art stuff. And I thought it would be nice to finish off the day pressing these lovely pink roses. I really love pressing flowers. I should really write some letters to friends so I can add some pressed flowers inside. I also like to just have a little record of plants I find at different times of year. In spring there are so many wildflowers around here. It'd been a long time since I had been to my favourite park, and even longer since I'd done some drawing away from the studio. We decided to get some snacks and head to the park for a relaxing afternoon and picnic. This park always has lots of cats, and it was lovely to see that they were still doing really well. If I'm being honest with you, these days buying cheese is kind of a special treat. It's gotten so expensive. I think we went for some Edam, some goat's cheese with herbs and some brie, as well as some Camponesisch flavoured crisps, which I don't think I've ever seen in the UK, but they taste amazing, and chocolate chip cookies. Oh, and beer, of course. After eating our feast and looking around for some inspiration, I decided I wanted to draw the oak leaves that were covering the whole park area above us. I got out my pencil and trusty platinum fountain pen to get drawing. It was really nice to loosen up a bit and draw something without worrying about perfect lines or accuracy. I just wanted to get a sense of what the leaves felt like rather than recreating them exactly. Oh, by the way, those of you that were concerned about my migraines in the hand drawing vlog I made, I started some daily medication and actually haven't had a migraine now for I think over a month, which is amazing. Hopefully things continue to be better. It's been kind of strange to suddenly be fine after having so many migraines week after week. It also helps me sleep better, which has been really, really lovely. I got so used to waking up most mornings in some kind of pain that it's been really refreshing to wake up actually feeling that I've slept well and I don't need to worry about how the rest of my day is going to go. Because it was the end of the summer holidays, there were actually a lot of families and children around, which I've honestly hardly experienced here. It was actually quite noisy with all the children playing in the playground right by the lunch area. Here I was taking a look at a European jaybird that turned up, which I was kind of excited to see up close. We have lots of them in our forest, but they are really shy and fly away as soon as they hear anyone approach, so it was really nice to see one so closely. Now I'm just finishing up my sketch with a few more scribbles and leaf detail. Time for a final stroll around the gardens before heading back home. I really love how much they take care of the gardens here. There are always flowers year-round, and it's always clean and maintained. Daniel took a couple of black and white photos of me while I was walking around and filming. Quite stylistically different, but I really like them. I wanted to visit my favourite tree before we left. It is huge, and underneath has all these tendrils hanging down and all these twisting roots at the base. And in spring it produces these beautiful red flowers. I like to reorganise my Sylvanian cosy cottage quite frequently, and seeing as my studio was nice and tidy again, I thought they also deserved some reorganisation. I think for Halloween I'm going to upload a video here in which I'm making some things to give the cosy cottage some extra Hallows charm. Maybe a ghost and some shiny pumpkins, maybe even some food treats. We'll see how I'm doing for time. I really like the attention to detail that Sylvanian families has on all their furniture and houses. A lot of my critters are also second-hand, and the bakery furniture is too. I also made all the baked goods myself. I should really do some more soon. They do not have enough food. I also did some modest gardening over the summer. I was really struggling to find time to do more, to be honest, but I grew these aubergines, which are actually my favourite vegetable. I grew lots of tomatoes, peppers, chilies and beans. And excitingly, my pomegranate tree finally produced its very first fruit. I think it will be ready to try in autumn. I've had this tree for around 5 years now, so I've been waiting for quite a while. This summer I worked on lots of different things besides the commission. I made lots of progress with my first full art doll. I had finished sculpting the hands, feet, and had painted her face and sewn her body. There's so much involved in learning how to make a doll. If you want to learn how to do absolutely most creative skills, I recommend trying to make an art doll. My next video is in 2 weeks, and it will be me finishing her completely, sewing all her clothes and making all her accessories and her hair. So if you're interested in seeing future art dolls, definitely subscribe and check out my art dolls playlist. I was drawing up ideas for her clothing before figuring out how to make each piece. I used a combination of my own ideas and tutorials for all the individual parts of her clothing, often combining what I had learnt from various tutorials. At this point I had attached her head, arms and legs to the body and was excited to finally finish her. I have 3 previous videos showing the face sculpting and painting process, then the sewing of the body, and the sculpting and painting of the limbs, and this is her so far at this point in the summer. You will see her completely finished in 2 weeks and I'll upload a video. I'm so excited to show you how she looks. She's really looking so lovely. I also created my first ever piece of fan art. I became kind of obsessed with the Apothecary Diaries anime and books, and because the protagonist is obsessed with herbs and poisons, it was thematically a perfect piece for me to create. The story is set in a kind of Tang Dynasty China, or a version of it, if you're interested in a really well written historical fiction anime with complex characters and mysteries. This print is also available in my shop too, and the process video can be enjoyed on the channel. I also decided to brush up on some of my technical practice and spend the day doing some hand drawing studies. It's really not something I do enough of, and I made this into a cozy, spend the day with me style video if that is your sort of thing. I also talk about some of my favourite art books. So I had this idea for a while, filling a page with portraits of grumpy looking princesses, all from very different backgrounds with different interests and personal struggles. I wrote a short little story and synopsis for each one, also a video on my channel if you want to enjoy that. I basically film everything I make, so everything eventually becomes a video, basically. It actually didn't quite turn out the way I envisioned, honestly, and I don't exactly dislike it. But I think I want to try doing this again one day, but a bit looser, or perhaps different angles and positions for each one. I've made this available as a print in my shop too, if you think you would benefit from being stared at by 9 grumpy faces every day. I know that I would. And now time for an update on my commission. Hello, so I've made quite a lot of progress, in fact, pretty much all the progress, more or less. So I finished, as you could see, my final illustration hand-drawn. I then scanned it very high resolution and I put it into Photoshop, cleaned up the image, made sure that it was very clean looking. And then I put it into Adobe Illustrator and I vectorized the image, and if you don't know what that means, it essentially means it converts it to a format that means no matter how large the image becomes, it doesn't become pixelated. It's kind of hard to explain, but if you imagine a low resolution photograph, when you try and make it larger it becomes all pixelated. That would eventually happen to my scan of my illustration if it were to, even though it's a very large file, if it were to be made large. Converting it to vector basically means it can be resized to any size. The only issue is that you do lose some detail and quality of the lines, so the lines look very digital, like digitized, very smooth, and so it loses that kind of hand-drawn quality to an extent. But if you play around with the levels, I find you don't lose too much quality to the drawing, so I spent quite a while making sure that the vector looked good and it didn't lose too much of my hand-drawn detail. And then basically here I've been playing around with the colours, and we decided that we wanted the background foliage to be more of a kind of muted hue, so that they really want the crystal to stand out, which makes sense. And I've been playing around with some colours, and I decided they had some other petal designs that had this moon, and the theme of this kind of series of petals is kind of a fantasy storybook theme. I thought I'd add like the moon to kind of give it a bit of continuity with the other designs. These are just the colours that I pulled from the reference image they gave for kind of what they wanted. It is kind of similar to another petal they have, so we'll probably use a different colour. We're thinking of something more of like a blue, maybe teal hue, which I think would look really nice. But basically, having my illustration in this file means that everything is really easy to change. You can change all of these colours very, very easily. Also, their petals they use paint, a certain paint finish. Some of them are like iridescent, some of them have like like sparkles, which I think is really fun. I'm really happy with this. I think once I kind of added the moon, something about that really tied everything in. I really love, I'll show a close-up of this, but I really like the roots and all the detail that I did for the roots. Yeah, I'm just really happy with it, and it's been like really fun to play with colour. I've been thinking about colouring my illustrations for quite a long time. I actually have been a little worried that the fact that my work is all black and white might be holding me back from clients deciding to use my work, because especially in publishing, most covers are colour or have some colour, so I think it would be really good for me to have some colour examples in my portfolio. So this has been a fun way of like experimenting with that. Although this is like untextured, I still like the way that the colour looks. So yeah, I have been interested in like experimenting with Critter, use watercolour brushes to colour some of my illustrations. But yeah, I'm really happy with that, especially considering how tight the deadline was. I'm actually doing really, really well for time. It's the weekend at the moment, and it's a week is when they wanted the final illustration, so then they have basically a whole week to tell me if there's any minor changes they want, and like with the colours or whatever. So we have loads of time to figure that out. Also, I'm really happy I negotiated with the fee, because I've been counting all the hours I've been working on this and my fee is like spot on, and I'm just gonna make sure everything's how I want it before I send it off to them and see what they have to say. And you'll probably hear from me again once the final illustration is out. I can't post this vlog at all until product is out and launched, so you'll be hearing from me again in September, which technically isn't summer, but in Portugal it borderline is still summer, so I think it still counts. Hello, so it is now September. I don't even know what the date is. Okay, it's coming to near the end of September. It is the 20th today, and my design has come out on the guitar pedal a few days ago actually, and I'm really happy with it. The photos they took of the pedal look really beautiful, and the design looks quite different when you see it on like a tactile thing. So I'll show some photos now, I guess. They actually already sold out. This is a limited edition pedal that they were creating called Loom. Although they're stocking the pedal in various places in the UK, and they're American based, so I'm assuming they're also stocking them in the US in various music stores, I guess. If you're a musician and you're interested in the pedal, there probably is still a chance to get your hands on one if you look where they're stocking them. They are also doing a giveaway on their Instagram page. I don't know how long the giveaway is going on for, so you could enter that as well. They're called Walrus Audio. But yeah, they were really lovely to work with, very straightforward. Kind of commissioning somebody can kind of be almost an art form in of itself. Maybe art form isn't quite the right term. Basically, if you ever do commission an artist, the more specific you are, the better. Like, being very vague is kind of a nightmare for an artist, because I can't read your mind, so it's really, really helpful when people are very clear about what they want, and they're clearly used to commissioning people, so they were nice to work with. I haven't actually done an illustration for anything like this before, so I've never really seen my illustration on like a object people are going to use like every day in their lives, so it's really exciting to think that people are going to be creating music and creative things with something with my design on it. It's also really cool to think that people are going to be like reviewing the pedal, and my art's going to be like reviewed on probably YouTube. There might be musicians that are recording themselves doing their stuff, and my pedal's going to be there, a tiny little box on the floor. But yeah, it's just a nice thought. Something kind of very cyclical about thinking about creating a design so that people can create, not designs, but in a sense design music, I guess. I'm kind of hoping that maybe some musicians see my work and might want to commission me to create album art for them. That would be very cool. I have created album art before. With a different portfolio, I created quite a few pieces for people, and with this portfolio I've created a few as well, so I would really love to branch out and do more work for musicians. So yeah, I hope you found this process interesting. Either if you are an artist yourself, just getting a kind of peek into what it's like to do a commission. I didn't film a ton of it because the deadline was really tight. I also hope that if you just like watching artists, this was like an interesting insight into how paid artists work sometimes. It's not always like this, like private commissions, which are basically if I'm just creating a piece of artwork that somebody wants on their wall, that's a very different process. Obviously we can go back and forth with roughs, but there isn't a contract involved. I would still probably ask for like 50% or some kind of deposit before I create the work. It's a bit different, it's a bit less formal, I guess. Yeah, how do I finish this? Have I forgotten anything? But yeah, these past like 6 months I've been really pushing myself and just been trying a lot of new things, and it's been really good, but it's also can be kind of overwhelming sometimes because I've really been trying to push myself to do things that I've been like kind of afraid of for a while and putting off, and then also I've been trying to learn a lot of new things as well. I mean, it can only lead to good things, hopefully. So anyway, that is the end of my summer vlog. I really hope you enjoyed this. Hopefully in the editing it all comes together and it isn't too confusing. I'm sure it's like somewhat organised. Yeah, it's been a really busy summer. It's gone incredibly fast and I've been doing so much work. Side projects, I've been teaching myself so many things. In a sense it's kind of a shame because I haven't had time to do some other things. I've barely played any piano, which is a real shame. That's something I really want to get back into in autumn. Trying to remind myself that I can't do everything all the time, and it can be really tough because I'm somebody that's interested in so many different things. It can be so difficult to keep on top of everything. So that's been my summer. It's I've really very much just been putting my head down and working, pretty much. I don't know how to end this. I guess I'll just say goodbye.